Okay, I think it's working. So I'm going to ping you guys in a second.
Okay. Matthew, I'm wearing the same t-shirt from Data AI Summit.
We're matching.
All right.
Let's try to get Scott in on the party.
Yeah, see, he is wearing like a true Delta Lake t-shirt. There you go, Scott.
I never got that one, that shirt.
Oh.
Also, hello, YouTube.
Oh, YouTube, hello. And then I'll just wait for LinkedIn. All right. So let me. Let me find the exact link of the stream. 1 second. It doesn't show me the exact link. It's only no, that's a company page. Okay, got it. All right, sounds good. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the Delta Lake office hours. Please tune into our feed on Delta Lake LinkedIn page where we are live. And we also are live on our YouTube channel. For just sanity of this office hours, a quick reminder for those who are new to the session, these sessions are live and occur every 2 weeks on Thursdays at 9 a.m. Pacific. We bring a panel of contributors and champions of Delta Lake to answer your questions about either getting started on Delta Lake, or if you're wondering what is coming up in the roadmap, what we built. If you missed any previous AMAs, don't worry about it. We have recordings available where you can watch it either on LinkedIn or YouTube on our Delta Lake channels. And since this is an official webinar of Delta Lake, therefore it's subject to a code of conduct. Please do not add anything or ask anything which will be in violation to that code. So without further ado, we have Scott and Matt on our panel. Why don't I give the room to them for introductions? Scott?
Sweet, thanks, Vinny. Hi, everyone. I'm Scott. I've been on here a few times before. I'm an engineer at Databricks working on Delta Lake. I've been working on this product and this open source project for over a year, added a lot of cool features in the past several releases. I'm really excited to be here and answer your questions.
Thank you, Scott. Matt?
Hello, my name is Matthew Powers. I'm a developer advocate at Databricks, big Delta fan for quite some time since it was released. And recently I've been focusing on a Delta acceptance testing project that we'll be chatting about, and also writing a bunch of Delta blog posts that are getting me even more excited about Delta. Every time I do Delta stuff, it just makes me more happy about the product.
That's awesome. So because you're so happy, Scott, Matthew, what are you bringing for the community? I know you are working on some exciting things. So do you want to give a quick sneak peek?
Yeah, I'll give a high-level overview of the Delta acceptance testing project. It's something I'm collaborating with Scott on, and also a bunch of other members of the community. So basically, at a high level, we want to create some reference tables, and those are going to be Delta Lakes. And we want the connectors to be able to write integration tests off of those reference tables. So we have a pretty vast ecosystem of connectors in Delta Lake, like Trino and Presto and Rust and Pandas. We want to make sure all those Delta Lake implementations can implement all the core functionalities that Delta supports. So we're going to help drive that with the Delta acceptance testing project. I think it'd probably be helpful to have Scott rephrase the same thing in different words.
Yeah, the goal here is to make sure that any client implementation that reads and writes Delta tables does so correctly. We want the Delta table to be a single source of truth, and that looks the same to any client, no matter how you're accessing it or writing to it. So this is just making sure that different clients are able to actually work together. because this is actually really reflective of how people use Delta. Sometimes you'll have one workload or one team that's using one client, another team that maybe wants to do something a lot more lightweight. So one is using Spark, another is using Pandas or Rust, or the Delta standalone reader and things like that. So making sure that we have a standardized way to test and validate how these different clients interact is really important to the overall success of the Delta ecosystem.
Does that mean we also provide some kind of like a ground framework for community? If they want to do any benchmarks or like build any connectors, they will be able to use that framework, something like that? Or am I getting it totally wrong?
No, yeah, that's exactly it. We want this to be a source of truth where you can come with your own connector and validate that you are producing the expected results and that you're reading the expected the expected data, that it's represented the same in your own system as it is in the table format.
That's pretty cool. And also we have benchmark framework, which was released with 2.0. That's great because it allows, it takes away a lot of complex setup from community. So thank you. Another question is around Flink. I know that we were working on several things with Flink. What are some of the things that is coming up in the roadmap?
Great question. So for those that don't really know much about Flink, perhaps because your version of Delta Lake is the Delta Lake implementation on Spark, which is our most popular repo. But Delta is just a file format, and it should be able to work with any compute engine and not just Spark. So Flink is one such compute engine. It's able to provide really, really low latency and was built from the ground up with streaming in mind, whereas Spark was initially kind of more geared towards batch jobs, and we figured out streaming a little bit later. So the Flint Connector is a connector with Delta Lake that supports Flink sources and Flink syncs, and those two versions were released this year. So we're actively working on it, which is really exciting. And we have our first, companies out in the open source community using it for the first time and getting great feedback from them. So source and sync is what's been developed so far this year. And currently, right now, we're working mainly on upgrading the Flink version that we support. So just upgrading our versions along the way. And there's some little bumps in the road along the way while we're doing that we're problem solving. And we're also working on adding SQL and catalog support. So the goal here is for our Flink connector to work complete integrate with SQL queries, as well as to provide our own Delta catalog, which is just kind of necessary to solve some of the problems when you're integrating with a meta store. So yeah, those are both actively in development, and there's actually a public design doc on our GitHub issues in the connectors repository if people want to go and leave some feedback.
So Scott, one question on that. So if I'm using Flink and integrated with Delta Lake, is the idea that I can run some SQL queries on Flink to be able to actually query any metadata information from Delta Lake?
Any metadata, any actual data, for sure. And,
okay.
And again, a cool thing to highlight here is the fact that all these different compute engines can work together. So one common use case is you could have the Flink connector appending to an append-only table, and that's just really, really low latency. Like that could be one of your pipelines. Then you can have a Spark query on Delta Lake that's running optimized compaction to compact your data for faster reads later on. So both of these two pipelines can work interchangeably.
Got it. Thank you. And in terms of just these engines in general, I do see a lot of trend around streaming. So people use different tools. So Matthew, what are your thoughts on the trends on streaming? What are popularly used methods with Delta Lake?
It's a great question. And I think that in the streaming space, there's a lot of different ways you can go with it. So let's say you have a Kafka stream and you'd like to get the data into a Delta Lake. From what I understand, Scott, is you could, and let's say you want to do some transformations to the data in the Kafka stream before you put it in the Delta Lake. I think that the Flink connector that Scott was just referencing would be a way to do that. And I think another way to do that is you could read the Kafka stream directly with Spark Streaming, do some transformations, then output it into into a Delta Lake. So I'm actually kind of curious on some of those high level design decisions, Scott, if you could educate me.
Yeah, it all depends on like a customer or user to user basis. It depends like what sort of latency you're looking for. It depends on what kind of cost management you want to implement. It depends what's like the legacy architecture you have at your company. Delta on Spark is a very, very robust battle tested solution. It's been in the open source community for over 4 years now. And it's been continuously getting better and better. Where these new connectors, they're still being created. We're still working out some kinks along the way. But we still want people, if you love Flink and Flink is the solution for your company, we have customers and users using this connector and they're giving us feedback, right? Because they want to make it better. So yeah, that's all I can really say on that.
Got it. Awesome. There's another question which is unrelated to this. Feel free to, say no, but which one should we use, DLT or DBT modeling? So I think, Abhishek, I'm not really sure what you are trying to build, but
Delta Live Tables isn't like a Delta Lake open source project. So I don't know how much we can speak to that here.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
if it is
stands for those that don't know.
DLT, Delta Live Tables. Awesome. Another question is, so we, there is very helpful information which is captured in the operation metrics of Delta Lake. So I know that, when I used some of the operation metrics for like compliance and things like that, it really helps to understand the user history and all that cool details. Are there any features in Delta Lake that allows community to take a sneak peek into operation metrics currently, or is that something in the works?
Yeah, we have APIs that expose all of this metadata for you. I'm sure you can go on our website and explore the different APIs for getting the table history, for getting operation metrics for a given transaction. Each commit to the Delta log has a commit info action under the hood that will store these operation metrics. So you can see number of target rows deleted or number of source row copies if you're doing a merge and things like that. All this is like really easily accessible.
Got it. And I remember something that was coming up in the roadmap. I'm not really sure which feature it was, but it was related to some operation metrics. But I will be excited to see that feature.
So Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, would like the change data feed stuff be in that bucket, like for like, like let's say auditing purposes, you're like, enable the change data feed. Is that in that bucket too, you think?
Yep. So for when change data feed is enabled on your table and you perform any sort of DML operation like insert, upsert, merge, delete, etc., we keep special CDC, CDF change data feed related operation metrics in that commit as well. Operation metrics are a public API. They're a first-class citizen and they're heavily supported throughout Delta. So when we added a new feature like CDC, we made sure to update the operation metrics accordingly. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Still learning what operation metrics refer to specifically, but I'm learning.
So Matthew, maybe like I can add if that makes sense. So anytime a user performs any action, Delta stores a record of add, delete, and it also stores what queries it performed that operation on and how many lines of Delta, how many rows changed, how many rows were impacted. So all these information were collected and gets collected into operation metrics that a user can query. This allows a user or audit team to see which user performed what action on a Delta table. For example, if I'm missing a row which was supposed to be a GDPR compliant data for a user, and now a user is requesting if my information, you have my information, but you can show them like, hey, we have this record. this was deleted operation. So you can give that as a proof that, oh, my table no longer has your record because I performed this operation on this specific date, timestamp, etc.
Got it. So if you're like undergoing a GDPR audit, you can like hand that over to the auditor and be like, this is evidence that this transaction took place at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just one thing that we don't capture right now is, I think, the vacuum operation. So that's something that I think we are discussing. I'm not really sure, Scott, if we have, made any PRs on it, but I'm pretty sure, like, that would be a good enhancement to this.
Yeah, for sure. Community can give us feedback. I would love to hear like what exactly people want. And Matthew, this seems like a great future blog for you.
I'm motivated. I'm into it.
All right. I think we are also working on some of the user-facing, blogs and tutorials. So Matthew, do you want to give a sneak peek on some of the things that is coming up?
Yes, I do. So one blog post I just drafted and be publishing soon is on how to convert a Parquet table to a Delta Lake. I think that one thing that's really cool is that this is actually an in-place operation. So like, let's say you have a bunch of Parquet files sitting in disk and you want to convert them to a Delta Lake to get all the advantages of the nice features of Delta Lake, but you don't want to do an expensive rewrite of the data. So the Delta OSS API exposes this convert to Delta method, and you can kind of just take those Parquet files, convert it to a Delta Lake, which all that entails is making this Delta log directory. And then all of a sudden your Parquet data is a Delta Lake and you can enjoy all the wonderful benefits that Delta provides. So I will be publishing that post hopefully today on the delta.io blog. And in doing that work, I noticed that we hadn't yet exposed the opportunity for users to not gather statistics in this conversion. So opened an open source request an open source issue for that one, and that's a good first issue. So if somebody wants to tackle that's something that you could jump on.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward, Matthew. There are some more questions on our chat. So I think one of the question is, even I tried vacuum, but it did not work what we expected, especially for streaming. Murugan, if you actually can provide more details, if you have I will paste the link for Slack channel, because I think I would like to learn more about what exactly your parameters are and what you are trying to run. So hopefully I can help there, or somebody else can.
I also think that their initial question was just about they're performing a lot of upserts and they're seeing an increasing cost in terms of their storage. So two things I would say to that. Oh, I guess three. One is you said is give us more details in Slack. We would love to dive into the details and help you out here. Secondly, I'm curious like how you're partitioning your data. If you're not, then that could be kind of a bad smell of the design of your architecture, perhaps, because you could be touching a lot of files with your upserts. And secondly, thirdly, I wanted to call out feature that we're working on called deletion vectors, which is designed to really help with these fast writes and to slightly reduce storage costs in terms of typically when you do an update now, you have to completely rewrite that file. Even if you only changed one row in that initial file. But with deletion vectors, we can make that change of that one row a very, very lightweight sort of metadata write instead, which means you're not fully duplicating that file. And features like this, once they're added to Delta, I think could really help you save some costs there.
Awesome. Thank you. There's one more question. I think that's all we have time for. So Gary is asking, is there a difference in performance in implementing Delta Lake using the library directly on Spark or use Databricks?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I would say that any sort of API feature that's not yet in Delta Lake, we have committed to fully open sourcing and adding it eventually. That's what we announced at Delta 2.0, and that's what we're really excited to be adding all these features like deletion vectors to Delta Lake. But then when you talk about this performance difference between Spark and Databricks, that's where it's not really Delta Lake anymore. Databricks has a proprietary engine called Photon, and that is much faster than Spark, than Apache Spark for various reasons. But that's not really related to Delta. Delta, our goal here is to have the table format and the APIs be fully compatible.
Got it.
And if they have more questions, keep asking the Slack channel. Love to follow up on that.
Yeah, I'd say with the 2.0 release, now that you can Z-order, I think that was something that was a gap before, but not anymore. So I would say it's pretty equivalent at this point.
Awesome. Yeah, so I pasted the links for our Slack, GitHub, and other channels of Delta Lake. Feel free to join that and ask many questions. I know this happens twice, bi-weekly, but you can always reach out any day on Slack or GitHub. So thank you all. We had a wonderful Q&A around here. So thank you, Scott and Matthew, for doing your due diligence and answering a bunch of questions. We will have these office hours on October 6th next time. So hope to see you there. Thank you.
Great questions, community. You always have really good questions. I'm always impressed by the quality of the community questions.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Vini, for hosting. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Vinny. Bye.